The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. Jesus said to his disciples, "A rich man had a steward who was reported to him for squandering his property. He summoned him and said, 'What is this I hear about you? Prepare a full account of your stewardship, because you can no longer be my steward.' The steward said to himself, 'What shall I do, now that my master is taking the position of steward away from me? I'm not strong enough to dig, and I'm ashamed to beg. I know what I shall do when I am removed from that stewardship, that they may welcome me into their homes.' He called in his master's debtors one by one. To the first one he said, 'How much do you owe my master?' He replied, 100 measures of olive oil. He said to him, 'Here is your promissory note. Sit down and quickly write one for 50. Then to another the steward said, 'And you, how much do you owe?' He replied, 100 cores of wheat. The steward said to him, 'Here is your promissory note. Write one for 80. And the master commended that dishonest steward for acting prudently. For the children of this world are more prudent in dealing with their own generation than are the children of light. I tell you, make friends for yourselves with dishonest wealth, so that when it fails, you will be welcome into eternal dwellings. The person who is trustworthy in very small matters is also trustworthy in great ones. And the person who is dishonest in very small matters is also dishonest in great ones. If, therefore, you are not trustworthy with dishonest wealth, who will trust you with true wealth? If you are not trustworthy with what belongs to another, who will give you what is yours? No servant can serve two masters. He will either hate one and love the other, or he will be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and mammon." The Gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ. I've always tried to figure out who this mammon guy is. This past Friday, I was reading a news article, and it had a headline that kind of scared me a little bit. It said that Christianity could possibly become a minority religion in the United States in as little as 25 years. That's a frightening headline. And it was based on research done by a very reputable firm, the Pew Research firm. However, I think that today's gospel has an answer for all of us to this very scary story. In today's gospel, Jesus tells us a parable. It's a parable about how the steward failed to live up to a standard that is demanded of any steward. In ancient Israel, a steward's job was to grow the master's property, his master's investments, and his master's reputation. His job was not to maintain what was given to him, but instead to grow it. According to the parable in today's gospel, this steward had obviously failed in his role. And the question might be, why? Why did he fail? Did he fail because he was distracted? Or maybe he was misguided? Or maybe he failed to understand the enormity of what he had been given. It just says that he squandered the master's property. At this point, it'd be easy for us to think about the parable of the talents out of the Gospel of Matthew. The parable where 3 servants were given money by their master, and then the master went away. 2 of the men grew the master's investment, and 1 hid his talent out of fear. But this parable, it's revealing something that's just a little bit deeper than that. More important than just multiplying what God has given us. This parable invites us to stop, take a moment, and reflect on our faith, on how our faith impacts every area of our lives, or at least should impact every area of our lives. Each of us moves through different stages in life, and looking back, we can easily see our missed opportunities. But that's not the real issue, and in fact, I don't think it's really the question that we need to be asking. The question is, are we squandering God's gift of forgiveness? That's the big gift that God has given us. It seems that all too often we let our spiritual life be influenced more by those around us than by understanding the gift that we've been given. We look and hide our spiritual life out of concern for how other people look at us. That causes us over time to live very cautiously, too cautiously. And by being cautious, we fail to live out our faith in a way that has an influence on the world and on others around us. To have them really desire what we have received. I remember back not too long ago, there was a young woman in our CIA that was looking for a sponsor. And that person came forward and said, I want this person to be my sponsor. And we didn't know why she would have asked for that particular person until she says there's joy on her face and it shows. I want to be like that. Jesus is challenging us to outwardly expose our faith, especially to those who could impact our relationships, or for that matter, our jobs, our income, or any other aspect of our life. It's easy to suppress our belief in God than to stand firm and show forth the joy of our faith. This parable goes to the heart of who we are. Are we disciples who truly believe, or are we like Nicodemus, who sought out Jesus at night so that no one else would know? This parable goes deeper than just a feeling about our status. It involves our relationships. It involves our feelings of acceptance. It involves our fear of rejection and maybe exclusion. It takes a strong faith, a real trust, to stand firm in the face sometimes of ridicule and rejection. We need to begin to allow our faith to be our source and our summit, the basis of everything that we do and everything that we say. Our faith can and should impact other people, be it just one individual or maybe a group, maybe an entire office or a school or maybe a neighborhood. It's not easy to be a visible believer in Christ, a visible and practicing Catholic. It's not easy to acknowledge that God is the answer to everything that we long for, and at the same time knowing that our witness to that faith, well, it may just jeopardize those things that we dream of attaining in the world. I think there's one other lesson in this parable too. It's how the steward responds when he realizes he's about to lose everything. by his lack of attention to what his master was expecting of him. He becomes really focused. Immediately, he became energized to protect his future, to avoid total disaster. He used his abilities and directed his attention to things that would help him to survive. It's amazing how easily we turn to the world instead of applying ourselves, as Matthew Kelly says, to being the best version of ourselves all the time, of being who God created us to be. This parable is about us being stewards of God's grace. I think we're squandering the gift of salvation by hiding our spiritual lives from one another. Paul tells us to pray and to have our minds renewed and our eyes opened and to have our hearts touched by God. To have God do that, we need to be present to Him, not just in church, but also in our homes, in our workplaces, in our schools, and even where we relax and where we play around. We must begin to exercise our spiritual stewardship, not just here, but outside of these walls. Jesus is challenging all of us who profess Him as the Christ to allow that what He did on the cross might influence everything that we do, that gift might matter, to allow that great, great gift of love to shine out of each and every one of us, every minute of every day. If we can do that, we'll multiply our own abilities to love, our own abilities to forgive, and our own abilities to influence other people. This world needs a revival of faith. According to that Pew Research poll, it's coming quick, and we're going to need that faith. And those in the world need to experience Christians who are living in a manner that gives other people hope, because hope can easily turn into faith. The world needs believers whose lives are full of joy, a smile, a happiness that just seems to seep outside of our skins. If our faith does not change us, then why would anyone be interested in what Christianity has to offer? Just a thought on a parable.